was in my junior year of high school in 2009. I was sitting one regular school day in English class. It was towards the end of the year, and we were working on final projects, meaning we needed to use the school laptops. The school library was closed for the week because of some kind of damages or renovations. I really don't remember all the details regarding that. But even still, I was pretty sure the laptop carts were still being stored in the back room of the library. My teacher asked the class which of us would like to go down and get the cart. I really had to pee, so I raised my hand because it was a good excuse to go down to the bathroom anyway. After making a quick stop at the bathroom, I made my way to the library. The lights inside were all off. There didn't appear to be anyone in the entire library. It was pretty dark, but there was just enough light from the few windows in there to see where I was going. Like I said, the laptop carts were usually way in the back section of the library in a separate room. There was a glass window that looked from out in the main area of the library into this back room, and it was really dark in there. I tried the door handle, but it was locked. Now I looked around not knowing what to do. I didn't really want to go back to the classroom to tell my teacher. I looked around the library, hoping there was maybe at least one staff member in there. I did hear something coming from the other corner of the library, actually. As I walked closer, it sounded like some kind of consistent clicking sound. It was coming from one of the study rooms that classes would sometimes be held in. The door to this room was cracked open, but it was also dark in there. There were also windows that looked into this room, so instead of marching straight in there, I tried looking in through the window in the main section of the library. I was like 80% sure I could see someone standing in the back corner of this little room. I pushed the door open a little more and called into the room. My voice echoed a bit. I tried hitting the light switch, but the lights didn't turn on, confirming the power was shut off in the library. I stepped into the room, a bit confused why I didn't get an answer. I wanted to confirm that what I was seeing was a person. It's so hard for me to explain what I was seeing. It literally looked like a humanoid figure from the doorway. Head, torso, and everything. I didn't even have a cell phone back then to use to light up the room. I stepped deeper into this room, but I stopped when I started to become disturbed by what I was seeing. It didn't look like a person anymore. It looked like some kind of thing. Humanoid thing. I was pretty sure he or it or whatever was looking at me. I could make out a face on its head, which was easily twice the size of a normal human head. Not to mention how tall this thing was, maybe 7-8 feet up. It was completely still, as was I, and it wasn't until I saw movement in the corner that my heart completely dropped and I ran out of the room and out of the library. I was breathing heavily, heart racing. A teacher I knew named Miss Carp happened to be walking by in the hall, and I asked her frantically to follow me into the library to see. She asked me in a stern voice why I was even going into the library, given that no one was allowed to enter that week. I told her that I was sent to get the laptops, and maintaining her stern voice, she told me all the laptop carts were moved to the presentation room. Apparently, I had zoned out when my teacher mentioned this. I told Miss Carp to follow me into the library anyway to show her what I saw. But when she reluctantly followed me there, not only was nothing there in that back room, but the light inside of that room was now working. Miss Carp was annoyed with me, and of course she didn't believe me or just thought I was seeing things. I eventually went back to class with a computer cart for the presentation room and explained to my teacher that I went to the library by mistake. I never really mentioned what I saw to anyone else for fear of sounding stupid or crazy. I don't know if I believe in ghosts or paranormal shit, but I really have no freaking clue what I could have seen in there. Sure, eyes can play tricks on you, but not like that. I saw something big in the corner of that room. Something not human. I went to a relatively small commuter college in Delaware. During my freshman year, I had my classes set up horribly. I would get to school at 3 p.m., have a couple classes, then a 2-hour gap before my next class, and I wouldn't leave campus until around 9. I'll admit, in my early years of college, I was kind of antisocial. I could have been trying to meet up with people in the food hall or joined clubs or even just went to the library during my breaks. But for my final class twice a week after my 2-hour gap, I would be in a basement classroom of one of the business halls. This basement only had this and one other classroom, and rarely ever would there be anyone else down there. Commonly, I'd just go straight down there, eat my food in the classroom, then just do homework on my laptop for the remainder of the couple hours. Or even just sit and play games on my phone or watch videos. Yeah, like I said, I was pretty antisocial. Well, one particular day, I felt lazy before class and didn't make myself food, so I had to go to the cafeteria hall to get a sandwich. I sat at a table alone and began eating, but quickly became uncomfortable after realizing I was the only one sitting alone at a table when a majority of everyone else there was sitting with friends. So I wrapped up the sandwich and decided I'd just eat down in the classroom and wait there like I usually did. I stepped out into the dark and marched back to the basement of the business hall and ate the rest of it there. Before I finished the sandwich, I heard the door creak open behind me. I was in the back corner seat right by the door, so when I turned, I was almost face to face with some kid I'd never seen before. He looked maybe a couple years older than me. He had this gross, overgrown beard, he wore glasses, he had a bit of a belly. Seriously, I'd never seen him in this class. We made awkward eye contact for a second until I looked away and continued eating. I made a mental note that the kid looked off, like he was weird or something was just not right about him. I saw in my peripheral vision the kid sit down in the desk literally right next to mine. I wanted to say so badly, why? Why are you sitting right there? But I just tried my best not to look at him and just ignore it. I looked at the time on my phone. There was still a whole hour and a half before class started. I looked up, not at the kid, but slightly looking to the left, just enough so I could see the kid looking at me. That was enough for me already. I finished my sandwich, picked up my bag, and walked out of the classroom. I didn't care where I was going. Maybe a bench outside, just not there anymore. When I stepped back outside into the darkness, I looked around for somewhere to go and sit for a while. I walked to the more woodsy section of campus and sat on a bench under a nice and bright light post. It was chilly out since it was late fall, but I'd deal with it. Not many students walked by this section of campus. It was by a pretty unused small parking lot surrounded by trees everywhere. Suddenly I heard cracks and crunches of leaves. I looked around and spotted something. Between two pine-like bushes, there was someone standing there. I stood up and extended my neck out, I guess, to get a better look. It was that guy again. He wasn't even making an effort to hide his face. I was about to take off again when he cut through the two bushes and said hi. He started to talk to me, but the way he spoke was also off. He'd overpronounce everything, if that makes sense. He started asking me so many questions about myself, like if I go to school here, what my major is, where I work, what I do for fun. It was so painfully uncomfortable, but I tried to be nice by also asking him some questions. We ended up sitting down for a while. Eventually he asked for my number. I don't know why I gave it to him. I guess I was trying to be nice. Then he turned it weirder. He asked where I live. At first I answered with my hometown, but he said no, like, where do you live? I paused, not knowing what to say. I repeated my same answer. Then he said, no, like, what's your address? I didn't even ask him why he was asking that. I just said I gotta go and quickly walked away. When I looked back, the guy was following me. I didn't know what was wrong with him, but he was freaking me out. I skipped class that night and drove straight home. I crashed into bed and started doing my homework. After finishing a short paper, I checked my phone and it was full of texts from some random fake number. There had to be like 20 texts. They were all from that kid. It started with hey, then he worked down to you have a nice house. I suddenly felt a pain in my chest area. I replied back, go away or I'm calling the police. Then there was a knock at my window. I had the shade down, I couldn't see who it was. But along with the knock, I heard a muffled but familiar voice say, open the window. I yelled on calling the cops. Then he went silent. My mom and dad weren't home, so I really did end up calling the police. Nothing else happened before the police came. I showed them the text and explained the whole story. They said, though, that it would be better to see if it continued, since the kid didn't actually make any threats yet. They left, saying call again if he came back to the house and to block his number. The next day, the college sent a text to all students' phones warning about sightings of a dangerous young man seen walking around with a knife. Classes were shut down for the day, and police searched the entire campus. I called to give my story and was asked to give it to the police again. As far as I know, that creepy guy was never caught. I don't know why he was targeting me, I don't know what his motive was, but this is the story about how I was almost murdered in my own home by someone I met at school. Back in high school, my group of friends consisted of about 10 people, but it would be rare that we'd all do things together. On a dark and cloudy school day, my friends Jared, Michelle, Christina, and I were all sitting in history together. We had a sub that day, and we weren't really doing any work, so everyone was just talking. Our high school was really old, like built in the 1930s, and there sat an old second building in the woods that was apparently used back in the 40s as some kind of daycare or preschool, and it just happened to be on the high school grounds, but they never tore it down. It was so old and decrepit it has vines growing on the side walls of it. The four of us were talking about how we should break into it that night since it was Friday. We didn't tell the rest of our friends because it would be harder to do with a lot of people. So nightfall came. We snuck onto the school grounds through a more hidden path to avoid security, and we easily made it towards the woods. We got to the building, which was in a fenced-off area. Jared and I boosted the girls up over the fence. Then we climbed over ourselves. The building was about twice the size of a house. There was no way we were the first ones to have been doing this. We scanned all four walls looking for a good entry point. There were multiple windows, and then we found the front door to the building. Locked, of course. Jared and I ended up breaking a window, but we had the girls keep watch. Once again, we boosted the girls up inside first, then Jared crawled inside, and lastly me. It took me a bit to squeeze in. I was the biggest one there after all. I actually cut my hands on some glass. After managing to get in, I looked around in the dark, cold room I was standing in. I realized it looked like an archaic, class-like room, but I also realized my friends weren't in there. I yelled Jared's name over and over. I left the little class-like room and entered a tight, decrepit hallway. There were a bunch of open doors leading to similar classrooms, but now I was more focused on finding my friends. I had no idea why they went ahead of me so quickly. I called their names again and again to no avail. I looked into all the tiny classrooms until I got to one, where I saw Jared standing in the corner. He was looking out the window. I said, "Dude, what the hell are you doing, and why couldn't you wait for me?" He just turned and looked at me, I guess. I couldn't make eye contact in that darkness. I looked down the hall again and called both girls' names. And with that, I heard someone stepping on something pretty loudly further down the narrow hall. I stepped through the mess of random school objects littered on the floor and got to the last classroom on the left. And the second I looked inside, someone jumped out and screamed in my face. I nearly had a heart attack, but it was Jared. Christina and Michelle came out from behind me, hysterically laughing. They revealed that they came up with a plan to hide from me to scare me a few minutes before going in. I playfully shoved Jared, but with my heart still racing from the scare, it started racing even faster, because I remembered that figure I just saw in that other classroom. I told them all to shh, and whispered I saw someone else and thought it was Jared. I waved for them to follow me back to that classroom, but whoever that person was in the corner wasn't there anymore. I stepped into the classroom, but it looked empty. Then I heard one of the girls gasp. I stepped back to them and looked at what the three of them were looking at. She was pointing at the crack between the door to the classroom. There was someone standing behind the door with their face pressed up between the crack to the door. The two girls screamed, and Jared yelled, "Let's get out of here." We all ran back to the window we came in through. I was the last one to climb out, and I can't tell you how scared I was that I was going to be grabbed by the legs and pulled down as I was climbing through. But I made it out. We hopped the fence again and ran back to Christina's house. It didn't make sense. The door to the building was locked, and the window we smashed was the only open window. So how could that man have gotten in? Better question, what was he doing in there? We told the rest of our friends, and rumors quickly spread about the building. I'm sure others went in there after that, but we never went near that building again.